Discussion regarding mask effectiveness is, of course, at an all-time high. We want to hear from the experts in this area. Joining me now is an infectious disease expert and senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health, Dr. Amesh Adalja. Doctor, good to talk with you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, do you agree with the decision by the CDC regarding vaccinated people wearing masks indoors again?
I don't think there's enough evidence or enough of an issue here to get a major benefit by having vaccinated people wear masks. We know that if you're fully vaccinated, the Delta variant, any version of COVID-19 is really not a threat to you. If you walk through hospitals right now, the people that are hospitalized are those that are not vaccinated. And what the CDC is basing their decision on is the fact that there may be some people who get a breakthrough infection that's associated with enough virus that they might be contagious, but it's very rare by their own admission, and they say this isn't what's driving transmission. Where we see high levels of transmission, we also see low levels of vaccination. It's the unvaccinated that are driving transmission. We're in a pandemic of the unvaccinated, so this is not going to really change the trajectory, but it's going to make people doubt the vaccine, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, because that's what all the discussion is now. Does the vaccine work? So let me ask you this. It may be very simple, too simple of a question to ask you, but I've got to put it out there. So is wearing a mask going to put an end to COVID?
No, the vaccine is going to put an end to COVID. A mask is a paltry substitute for a vaccine, and especially mask wearing by the vaccinated is not going to put an end to COVID. We want the unvaccinated to wear masks if they're not going to get vaccinated, but many of the places where we're seeing hotspots are going to be places that are very resistant to wearing masks, just as they're very resistant to being vaccinated. So we have a major problem in certain states in the South, places like Arkansas, places like Missouri, Louisiana, and that, I think having the vaccinated individuals wear masks there isn't really going to do anything except for make the unvaccinated say, why should I get vaccinated now? Because it doesn't change my life.
Yeah, and certainly it doesn't give good messaging to the vaccinated if you figure you got that vaccination to be free from this virus, and yet you're having to act exactly like that unvaccinated person. Do you believe that messaging is going to be counterproductive?
I do think the messaging is going to be counterproductive because we know there was a big jump in vaccinations after the CDC changed their guidance according to the science that if you're fully vaccinated, COVID-19 is not a threat to you. You can go about your life as close to the pre-pandemic level of activity that you had as possible. That was something that showed people that the vaccine was an individual value to their life. It allowed them to pursue the values that they had put on hold for 18 months. And I think when you tell people that even if you're vaccinated, nothing is going to change for you if you live in one of these places where there is high spread, that's going to disincentivize those individuals to get vaccinated because they're already not getting vaccinated. They weren't eager to get vaccinated, and now you're telling them they have to continue to wear masks and that they're still protected from infection, but they're wearing masks for a very small risk that's not driving transmission. I really think that that's very hard to set a policy around.
So let's talk about natural immunity as well, because that's been the other discussion. What exactly is natural immunity, and how long does somebody have it?
So natural immunity occurs after somebody's been infected with COVID-19, and it likely is something that gives you protection, especially against severe disease, for a period of several months to maybe a year or so. We know that reinfections can occur. They're rare. They're usually mild. And I think natural immunity does play a role in decreasing the spread of the virus. It does appear, though, that if you have natural immunity, getting at least one dose of a two-dose regimen will augment that immunity, make it stronger, make it last longer. So that's why we recommend that people who've had COVID-19 still get some vaccination. But the more a combination of both vaccine-induced immunity and the natural immunity that people have gotten from prior infection, that's what the kind of stymies the virus from finding new people to infect and new ways to spread. But again, it's not as robust as vaccine-induced immunity.
Do we know how, the duration, you touched on it a little bit. I've had some friends who had COVID and they were still testing positive for the antibodies over 9 months later. But then some folks, it seemed they only had it for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Does that mean that that person maybe had a different strain or a different severity, or is it just a case-by-case basis?
It's really a case-by-case basis, but we know from other coronaviruses, because remember, 4 other coronaviruses cause about 25% of our common colds, that reinfection does become very common about a year out from the initial infection. Those reinfections are usually mild, and I think what we're seeing is that we are seeing some reinfections as people get out from their initial infection, but it's something that I think we have to study more, and we know from certain variants, for example, the beta variant, which was discovered in South Africa, that the beta variant can evade the natural immunity fairly easily. So this is behind the reason why we want people who've recovered to at least, I would say, get 1 dose of the 2-dose regimen vaccines or the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Dr. Adalja, you've been a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time tonight, sir.
Thank you for having me.